to your Monday edition of Bet. I'm your host, Anita Marks, and we've got a great show lined up for you. We're going to talk a little USA Soccer Women's Edition because we've got the World Cup coming your way July 20th. It all begins, and the women's first game is July 21st. Sebastian Salazar is going to join us to preview that tournament. Also, two-a-days continues on all our platforms on ESPN. Today, it's the Colts and the 49ers. So Stephen Holder is going to join us, talk a little Colts. Andre Snellings is going to join me, talk a little futures bets, getting you ready. And of course, before I let you go, we will talk about the San Francisco 49ers. But let's bring in Sebastian. Sebastian, great to have you on. I am so stoked, so excited. I love the World Cup. I love it when the women play because they always kick butt and take names. So let's start right there, right? Two-time defending world champions. Everybody's expecting them to win it. No surprise, they are favored. But let's focus in on their Group E. Do you have any reason to believe that they won't win every game in their group coming out of the first round?
Can I be honest here? I think the U.S. is going to have a tough group. That doesn't mean I think they'll lose games or even drop points in the group phase. But this is about as tough a group as the U.S. could have gotten. Vietnam in the first game we'll put aside for a second. But if you look at Portugal, it's a team that has improved a lot in recent years. And specifically, Netherlands is a team that has had the United States number in the past. They played in the last Olympics. It ended 2-2, and the U.S. advanced in a penalty shootout. But that Dutch team was very good, and they've proven they can win big tournaments before. They actually won the 2017 European Championship as well. The one thing about the Dutch, they don't have their big gun. Vivian Miedema is out with a long-term injury. She's one of a lot of star players in this tournament that will be missing because of serious injuries. So the U.S. will be heavily favored. I think they will win each of those three games, but I'm not that confident, especially when we look at that Dutch team. I could easily see the Dutch pulling a draw out of that game.
Wow, interesting. All right, you know, you've got this Women's USA team, a mix of veterans and some really exciting young talent that now have taken over the scene. Their first game, again, will be July 21st. It'll be 9 p.m. Eastern time. Mark your calendars. And they're going up against Vietnam. They are a huge favorite. A lot of people don't want to lay that type of juice, Sebastian. So let's take a look at some other ways that you could wager this. Maybe the number of goals that the United States women's team is expected to score against Vietnam. Take a look at this, you know, over 5.5 goals, minus 145, 5.5, 6.5, 4.5, 7.5, plus 220. How much of a can is going to be opened up here against Vietnam?
Here's my warning to everybody, okay? There's a reason soccer has a reputation as a low-scoring sport. Everybody wants to go after these overs. But a lot of times the under is your better play. And I actually think in this case, that is what's happening here. If we remember back to 2019, everyone's thinking, oh, I remember the first game of that tournament. The U.S. won 13-0 against Thailand. Well, let me tell you something. This Vietnam is not that Thailand. They just played Germany, who might not be a World Cup favorite, but is absolutely a World Cup contender. They only lost 2-1. They're a very, very well-drilled defensive team, and I think they're coming into this game not to get blown out. The other factor here is the U.S. team. Yes, as you mentioned, they are the two-time defending World Cup champions, but they have not looked all that good, especially in attack in the lead up to this tournament. We saw that yesterday in their farewell game in San Jose, California. They played Wales, a team that did not even qualify for this tournament, and it took them till the 78th minute of 90 to break through. They finished the game 2-0 winners. But I think the American attack right now is not firing at all cylinders. And in that opening game, I like the under 5.5 goals there for the Americans. I think it's paying out at plus 115, plus 120. I think there's some good value there. I don't see the U.S. starting that strong from a attacking standpoint in this tournament based on what we've seen in the build-up.
So, Sebastian, you're not obviously, right? Like, we're 3 minutes into the show. You're not as high on the United States team as most people, but they are favored, minus 400. And again, that's a lot of juice for a lot of people. We don't warrant playing those type of odds. But more importantly, are you surprised that they're minus 400 for a team that the odds makers are expecting to win this whole damn thing? Minus 400 just to get out of their group and favored to win their group?
Yeah, to win the group is the key, right? Because that's really going to be what sets you up for potentially a long run in this tournament. And the focus for the U.S. is going to be to win the group. They're miles ahead of Portugal. They're miles ahead of Vietnam. Again, the question here is the Dutch. What Dutch team do you get? It is most of the same players that won the European Championship in 2017, with the great exception of Vivianne Miedema. And you can't overstate her value to the Dutch team. Given her absence, I absolutely think, minus 400 makes sense here. But this Dutch team is still dangerous. I can't say that enough. This Dutch team is not to be taken lightly, even without Vivianne Miedema. And I think at minus 400, I just wonder, what are you aiming for there? How big of a swing do you have to take to really make anything on a bet like that, especially with this Dutch team? The Americans also have a history of kind of slow starts to tournaments, really getting their win in the quarterfinals, semifinals, and beyond. I would stay away from there because I just don't see the value in that minus 400 to win the group.
Okay, so again, you've got the United States. We talked about Vietnam, Portugal. Obviously, you like the Dutch. Is that warrant a play? Would you play them as some really good odds on the slate to upset the United States in that group?
See, the Dutch are a tricky team like that. They're a tricky team like that because their high end could absolutely trouble the Americans. However, if you look back at the last European Championship, they imploded, not just in terms of how they played on the field, but infighting between the players and coach. It ends up leading to the coach's dismissal. So I think this Dutch team is volatile, and that's why I'm staying away from maybe the U.S. at minus 400. But I don't know that I'm that confident in the Dutch team to provide their best either. I just think they're a wild card worth staying away from when it comes to this U.S. group. I see them creating problems for the U.S. In their group phase game. And because of that, I just think the value for the U.S. is going to be later on in this tournament.
Okay, so I'm looking at the odds right now, looking for who's going to score the most goals for Team USA. Nothing is out right now. We know Rapinoe is expected to come off the bench, be more of a captain, a co-coach coming off the bench. I guess I'm going to fade her. A lot of hype around Smith. Alex Morgan making another start here for Team USA. Who would you wager is going to score the most goals for Team USA?
When I look at this U.S. team, it's very interesting because it really does appear like it's going to be goal scoring by committee. I think a lot of people look at Alex Morgan, and that's fair. She is the big name, and she plays the number 9 position, the position most likely to score. She also takes penalty kicks unless Megan Rapinoe's on the field, and we know she's probably going to be a sub, Rapinoe. So Morgan will get her goals, but there's another player that I think is really the key point of this American attack, and that's Sophia Smith. She is fast. She is a finisher, and what we have seen in league level, in the National Women's Soccer League, is that this player, no matter how young she is, 21, 22 years old, is ready to dominate at any level. And so I think she's going to be the player that gets a lot of attention. She's going to score a lot of the goals. And amongst American goal scorers, I think Sophia Smith is going to be the top U.S. goal scorer. Now, if we look at the whole tournament, that's where I see some of the other teams that are a little bit more kind of a one-man band approach. They have one person that you say, this is going to be your goal scorer, and that's where I'm finding value, where you can get odds on Golden Boot, because it is tough to find. That's one of the things that we're finding out about, the Women's World Cup and women's soccer in general. There's interest here, and the betting markets need to step up. They need to start giving us odds so that we can get involved.
Yeah, preach, preacher, preach. You tell those odds makers, Sebastian. All right, before we let you go, let's take a look at who you think is going to be in the final match. And our producer, Weimer, put together a great graphic here, right? England and the USA. This is the one the odds makers believe will be the championship match at plus 550. Germany as well, France and Japan. Japan getting some love, Spain in there as well. Who would you play here? What do you think the final matchup is going to be for the championship, Sebastian?
Look, common wisdom. I mean, everybody is saying it's going to be England, USA. And at plus 550, that is a really good value. But I like something else on that board. At 12-1, the U.S. to be in the final against Australia, the host. Australia is one of these teams that is loaded on talent, but has never quite been able, in a major tournament, to get over the hump. Well, no excuses anymore. Now they're at home, and on top of that, for me, they've got the best goal scorer in this tournament. That is Sam Kerr. If she catches fire and the nation gets behind Australia, which it seems like they are ready and willing to do, I could absolutely see Australia making a run to a final. And Sam Kerr, also not a bad bet for Golden Boot. I really do think that she's going to end up as the tournament's leading goal scorer.
Listen, obviously, again, as before we started the show, I'm so excited for the Women's USA team in this World Cup. But let's be honest, nothing better than a home team winning a World Cup on their own soil. Sebastian, great having you on. I'm sure we'll see your face quite often in the next few weeks as the World Cup starts. Again, July 20th. Mark your calendars. Sebastian, thank you.
Great to be with you, as always.
You got it. Stephen Holder joins us now. We go from football to football, right? And we're talking about the Colts because we're doing two-a-days here on ESPN. So, Stephen, great job covering the Colts. Excited to have you on. All right, so the win total right now for the odds makers for the Colts is 6.5, but it's juiced to the over, so it means the books like 7 wins for the Colts right now. Obviously, the big storyline is this dude on my shirt, Anthony Richardson, who we know went number 4 overall in the draft, or top 4 in the draft. That was a futures bet that I put in to the Colts. But so many question marks there, right? Didn't get a lot of playing time at Florida. Only played 1 season. Didn't play more than 15 games. Kind of raw for the NFL. What can you tell us? What can we expect as we get closer to the regular season? Do you expect him to be the starting quarterback week 1?
I think you cannot rule it out just yet. I don't necessarily expect it, but I think we need to learn more. The Colts need to learn more. That is really the defining characteristic about Anthony Richardson is his inexperience. So training camp will tell us a lot. The preseason will tell us a lot. I think one big factor that we can't overlook is how do we define Gardner Minshew? For me, I think he is not necessarily a huge obstacle to Anthony Richardson's path to the starting lineup. So the question will be, what is the upside of Anthony Richardson versus the presumed stability of Gardner Minshew out of the gate?
So, I find it interesting, obviously, because Steichen is the head coach now coming from the Eagles. As we know, Gardner Minshew was there. Don't you feel he's got a leg up coming into this quote-unquote quarterback competition because he does know the offense, especially going up against somebody like Anthony Richardson, who, again, as I said, really doesn't have a lot of college, let alone NFL experience, right? So how do you see that quarterback room playing out?
That's really his advantage. It's a huge advantage for sure. He has some disadvantages if you look at the 2 players from a physical perspective, certainly, right? But Gardner Minshew has always been a guy who plays a very heady style of football at quarterback, and that has been his calling card. He has an opportunity to be a guy who can really execute the offense at a high level. He is familiar with it. He's really the only guy in the building coming from Philadelphia who kind of has a mastery of what Shane Steichen wants to do. However, there's the other variable here, as I mentioned, the physical attributes and the things that they want and can do with Anthony Richardson. And I'm talking about the read option, the RPOs, a lot of the Jalen Hurts elements. They really plan to lean into that. They can't necessarily do that with Gardner Minshew. So it really is a question of styles and whether they sort of prioritize execution over possibilities. And those are questions that are hard to answer right now, but they're very fascinating. It will be fascinating to see how the Colts navigate this.
Yeah, it will be fascinating. Stephen, this is a gambling show, so I'm going to propose a prop bet out there. Anthony Richardson over under 2,571.5 passing yards, which would mean that if he was to play every game, that'd be a little over 151 passing yards a game. I am leaning towards the under here because I do believe Gardner Minshew is going to get the start, but you've got your finger on the pulse of this team better than most. What say you, and how would you play that passing total?
So that's a good one. I lean very slightly to the under just because that unknown factor, as you said, where Gardner Minshew start. And then the other added variable here is even if and when Anthony Richardson starts, this may not be the sort of pass-heavy offense that Shane Steichen envisions in the future. This year, it may be much more run-based. So those passing numbers, and that's something people in the organization have already acknowledged, those passing numbers may not be that robust. So they have Jonathan Taylor coming back, hopefully healthy. They have Anthony Richardson with certainly a prolific ability to run the football. So the running game has to be a big part of what they do, regardless of what the passing numbers look like.
So maybe fade on the passing yards, but the over on the rushing yards for Anthony Richardson as well as Jonathan Taylor. Sounds to me that might be the way to go. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate it.
You got it.
So we go from Stephen to Dre, my guy Dre. It's been a minute. Andre Snellings joining us here on Bet. All right, so you heard my conversation with Stephen, right? Not sure whether or not Anthony Richardson is going to get the start for the Colts. With that being said, you just heard that number, 2,571.5. How are you rolling here, Boo? You going over, you going under?
Going under. I agree with both of you two. And it's funny because you've got the man on his shirt, but you also went under. And I think that's the right play here. As you pointed out, he would have to average over 151 yards a game, but that's playing all 17 games. And like Steven said, we don't know that he's necessarily going to start the season as the quarterback. And if he does play, when he does play, he's expected to do a lot of running, which brings into question whether he'll take punishment and be able to finish the 17 games as well. He's got a pretty steep learning curve as a passer. He completed less than 54% of his passes last season at Florida. And if you look at recent seasons, other dual threat quarterbacks in their first season, from Josh Allen to Lamar Jackson to Jalen Hurts to, just Justin Fields, none of them have come close to that mark. And so I'm with you. I'm fading. I'm going under that 2,500 yard total.
Yeah, I'm with you. As you just heard, I think Gardner Minshew has a leg up on this quarterback competition. I do believe Gardner Minshew is going to be the starting quarterback day one, regular season game one. At what point in time do the Colts make their switch and go to Anthony Richardson, who is the future of the franchise and the future of the organization? And, because he doesn't have a lot of experience at some point in time when the season you feel is out of hand, in my opinion, for the Colts, is it that time that you say, okay, we really don't have a shot here. We don't have a shot in the division. Let's start our future with Anthony Richardson. When is that? Is that after the bye? Is that week 8? Is that week 12? Is that week 13? Their bye week is week 12. Because of that, again, it really plays to the under. I think a lot of people out there that are really big on Anthony Richardson, they might play the over because it's such a low number. But be careful. Ten cuidado, as we like to say in Miami, which I just got back from South Florida, so I might speak a little Spanish here in this segment. Let's go with the over-under in regard to the win total. Again, you heard me say it is at 6.5. The odds makers kind of like the 7. What side are you on here, Dre?
Anita se habla español. I like the over. I almost went into Spanish myself. I'm slightly leaning to the over. The Colts last season, they started off 4-5-1 through their first 10 games before, they changed quarterbacks mid-season. Ultimately, they ended up changing coaches mid-season, and they brought in a new coach with 0 coaching experience, and they finished the season 0-7. This year, they've got a new regime with some upside, and I think that they'll lean more towards their strengths by playing more towards their running game. And so I could see them having a little bit of a bounce back. Plus, the schedule, the AFC South is not strong. And their inner league rivals this season, their schedule, they'll be lined up with the NFC South, who's also not strong. So according to ESPN's ESPN's Football Power Index, FPI, the Colts are expected to have the 3rd easiest strength of schedule in the NFL this season, and they project to about 7 wins. And that sounds about right to me.
I am going on the under here because there's so many question marks at the quarterback position, but also defensively, I've got some major concerns. Last year, 15th in yards allowed, 28th in points allowed, dead last in red zone defense. And Shaq Leonard is coming off not one, Dre, but 2 back surgeries. So not sure if he's going to be ready to go week 1. And their secondary is, in my opinion, one of the worst in the NFL with Rodney Thomas and Julian Blackmon. So defensively, I know we spent a lot of time talking about the offense because of the fact that they drafted Anthony Richardson. But for me as well, defensively, I am fading them. So I am going under 6.5. With that being said, plus 560 to win the division, plus 350 just to make it to the playoffs. You going to dabble in either of those futures?
Not really, not very much interest in this at all. And if I do have any interest, it's just kind of as a lottery, throw it into a parlay and see what happens. I have the Jaguars as my favorites to win the division. And I feel like, there's no chance the AFC South in this stacked AFC ends up with 2 teams making the playoffs. So I'm entirely out on the plus 350 to make the playoffs. I feel like that just lowers the juice for with them essentially having to still win the division to make the postseason anyway. I'm not expecting them to make the postseason, but I've got just enough anything could happen in me that at plus 560 to win a relatively weak division, I could at least see it, as I said, if I throw it in with some other parlays, into a parlay to try to win the lottery. But our FPI has them with about a 1 in 6 chance of making the postseason, and that sounds about right to me. So I'm not expecting them to be there, but maybe I'll roll the dice.
Again, we spoke to Steven, who covers the Colts. He says it's going to be a team that's going to be really committed to running the football. Screams Jonathan Taylor. You mentioned fantasy football just a second ago. Wow, he'd be great to have on your fantasy roster. Plus 750 to lead the league in rushing yards this season. Second favorite of all the running backs in the NFL. Is that a play you're going to make?
I'm very much in on Taylor to lead the league in rushing this season. It's easy to forget how dominant he was the year before last, but he ran away with the rushing title by like almost 600 yards over second place. So last season, injuries and kind of disappointments in the Colts offense derailed his season. But if he is able to come back healthy and he is in more of a rushing attack, I feel like Steichen's going to bring that strong rushing attack from Philadelphia, and that's going to help the Colts. But also, this is where I think Anthony Richardson, when he does play, could be a benefit, because when he's out there, he'll be another dynamic rushing threat, so that the opposing defenses can't just stack up on Taylor the way they did last season when the passing game wasn't working. So I put that all together. I really think this is a bounce-back season for Taylor, and if he stays healthy, he's my favorite to lead the league in rushing this season.
Interesting. I think you're absolutely right. When you've got a quarterback who can scramble and have that threat, it really opens up the pass and the rushing lanes for a lot of running backs. Hence why I like Nick Chubb to lead the league, because Kareem Hunt is not there anymore. And Deshaun Watson, what is he going to do? He's going to do exactly what you're talking about, what we're anticipating Anthony Richardson to do, but maybe even at a better level and right from the get-go from week 1. So for me, it's Nick Chubb. Dre, thank you. Always great seeing you on Bet, my friend. Have a great evening.
All right. Thanks for having me.
You got it. All right, as always, we like to end with before we let you go. And again, we are doing 2-a-days, getting you ready for training camp. Is going to be here before we know it. And today, it's not just the Colts, but it's the San Francisco 49ers. So what's my futures bet? Brace yourself. I know this is going to surprise some folks, but I'm going under 10.5 wins for the San Francisco 49ers. You're asking yourself, why, Anita? Why would you do that? They're stacked. They're stacked. They are. They've got a lot of depth. They've got a lot of talent. Their offense is explosive. But who's their quarterback? I don't believe in Trey Lance. I don't believe that the 49ers should have gave up all those first-round and third-round draft picks to go get him for what? Not a lot of NFL experience. He's only played 4 games, so it's not like he's had the experience to step in, start, and perform. So Trey Lance, not for me. Brock Purdy coming off of surgery. Will he be ready week 1? Keep in mind, marinating this for a minute, 31 teams passed on him 7 times. So I do believe that last year was an outlier for him. And Sam Darnold, he's already had a stint with the Jets, a stint with the Carolina Panthers. Neither of those teams kept him. Why do you think he would do well with the 49ers? To me, the quarterback position is the most important position of all professional sport, and we are a month away from training camps opening up, and the 49ers still don't know who's going to be their starting quarterback. So for that reason, I am fading the 49ers. If Jimmy Garoppolo was still on the roster, maybe I would feel differently, but I'm going under 10.5. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to Bet. Really do appreciate it. Have a great evening.